Welcome back to Investing Talk Podcast. I'm so glad you all decided to join us again today as we take a look at this company that's really been catching my attention.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's called Sobr Safe, ticker symbol, SOBR.
Interesting.
You know, it's so easy to get caught up in all the hype, around all the usual companies, AI, electric vehicles, all that
Right.
metaverse.
Yeah.
But sometimes, the most exciting opportunities, they're kind of hiding in plain sight.
Absolutely. I think that's a great point, While everyone's out there chasing the next big thing, Sobr Safe is kind of quietly disrupting a market that most people don't even really think about.
Interesting.
Alcohol detection is a multi-billion-dollar market, and, they're not just improving on what's already out there. They're completely changing the game.
So give us a little more detail here. What does Sobr Safe actually do that makes them so different?
So imagine a world where you can constantly monitor someone's sobriety without those bulky breathalyzers.
Right.
Or invasive blood tests. That's what Sobr Safe is making possible with their transdermal alcohol detection technology.
Wow, that's incredible.
It's really all about wearable devices, think like wristbands that can track alcohol consumption as it's happening, so it's continuous data instead of just like a one-time snapshot.
That's a huge step forward.
Yeah.
No more relying on all those outdated methods that are so easy to get around.
Exactly.
But I think the real question our listeners want to know is, where does the investing talk come in?
Okay.
Why should our listeners be paying attention to Sobr Safe as an investment?
Well, for starters, they're in a market that's projected to reach almost $20 billion by 2029.
Huge.
And with their technology, Sobr Safe is really well positioned to grab a big piece of that. But it's not just about the size of the market.
Right.
They've also made a strategic move that has investors really buzzing. They partnered with a company called Orbiit Recovery.
Ah, yes, the AI partnership.
Yeah.
I've been seeing that everywhere.
Yeah, everyone's talking about AI these days.
It seems like it.
But in this case, it's not just hype.
Okay.
So tell me more about how this partnership is going to change things for Sobr Safe.
Well, it's a brilliant move, really. By teaming up with Orbiit Recovery, Sobr Safe is adding artificial intelligence into what they're doing.
Interesting.
So that takes their technology beyond just basic detection and into this whole new area of personalized recovery support.
Okay.
So think about it, a system that not only tracks if someone's drinking, but also gives them feedback.
Okay.
Helps them intervene, connects them with resources to help them stay on track.
It's like having a coach right there on your wrist.
Exactly.
That's a really powerful concept.
It is.
And it could be a game changer for Sobr Safe and how fast they grow. But what about the stock itself?
Okay.
How has the market been reacting to all of this?
Well, the market has definitely noticed. On February 18th,
Okay.
Sobr Safe stock jumped over 20%.
Wow.
And there's a lot of people talking about a short squeeze.
Okay, what's that? A short squeeze is when, essentially, a lot of investors bet against a stock thinking the price is going to drop. But with all of this positive news, they might be forced to buy shares to cover their losses, which then drives the price up even higher.
Oh, wow. So it can really snowball.
It really could.
Okay. Well, that sounds like things could get pretty interesting. But before anyone runs out to buy shares, I think we need to look at the full picture here.
Yeah.
What can you tell us about Sobr Safe's financials?
Right.
Are they a solid company, or is this all just speculation and hype?
Well, it's important to remember that Sobr Safe is still a young company, and their Q3 2024 earning report shows that they did have revenue growth year over year, which is a good sign.
Good.
But they are still operating at a net loss.
Okay, so they're not profitable yet.
Right.
But for a company that's still growing, that's not necessarily a bad thing, right?
Exactly. It's not a red flag. They're probably investing a lot in research and development, marketing, and expanding how they do things. That's all super important for growth in the future, even if it means they're not making a profit right now.
Exactly. It's all about the long game.
Exactly. And that's where the idea of enterprise value comes in.
Okay.
Even though they have a net loss, Sobr Safe's enterprise value is relatively low.
Okay.
Which means that investors see a lot of potential for them to grow.
Interesting.
They're looking past the current numbers
Right.
and betting on the company's ability to make their strategy work and become a major player in this new market.
So we got this disruptive new technology, a market that's absolutely booming,
Right.
and a stock that's showing some signs of life. Now, for those of you listening who like to look at the charts, what can you tell us about Sobr Safe from a technical analysis perspective?
Well, the first thing that jumps out is the recent price action. Remember that 20% jump we were talking about?
Yes.
That happened with a huge spike in the number of people trading the stock.
Okay.
Which shows strong buyer interest.
Right.
And when I look at the moving averages, we see what we call a golden cross
Interesting.
where the 8-day exponential moving average crosses above the 20-day simple moving average.
Okay, so for those of us who aren't fluent in chart language,
Yeah.
what does that actually mean?
Right. It basically means that momentum is building.
Okay.
It's not a guarantee, but it suggests that the stock price is more likely to go up than down.
Okay.
Keep an eye on the 50-day simple moving average. If SOBRsafe can break through that level with a lot of trading volume, it would be a really strong signal that a big upward trend is starting.
So there's some positive indicators there,
Yeah.
but I imagine there are also some risks to think about. Investing is never a sure thing.
Right.
And SOBRsafe is still a fairly new company.
Yeah.
What should our listeners be aware of before making any decisions?
Yeah, you're right. SOBRsafe isn't without its problems. They have a history of what we call stock dilution, which can affect how much existing shares are worth.
Okay.
And like we said, they're still not making a profit yet.
So there's a chance for big gains,
Yeah,
but also some things that could go wrong to consider.
absolutely.
It sounds like the classic high-risk, high-reward situation.
It is. That's why it's so important for anyone thinking about investing in SOBRsafe to do their own research,
Right.
understand the company's financials, and be prepared for some ups and downs. This is not a stock for someone who gets scared easily.
Good advice. Before we go any further, I just want to remind everyone listening, this is not financial advice.
Right.
We're just sharing information and our perspective
Yeah.
to help you make your own decisions.
Absolutely.
Always do your own research and talk to a financial expert
Yeah.
before investing any money.
Right.
Now let's take a minute to dive a little deeper into some of these key points.
Right.
We'll be right back.
So before we went to a quick break,
Yep.
we were talking about SOBRsafe's potential for growth and some of the risks of investing in a young company.
Of course.
Like this, I think it would be helpful
Yeah.
to look a little deeper into
Yeah.
their financials, just to kind of get a clearer picture.
Absolutely. Let's take a closer look at their Q3 2024 earnings report,
Okay.
which covers the period ending on September 30th.
All right.
Their revenue for that quarter was $46,129.
Okay.
A pretty significant jump from $36,274 in the same
Wow.
period last year.
That's great.
It is. That's a pretty impressive year-over-year increase.
It is.
Sounds like their SOBRsafe wearable device
Mm-hmm.
and their software as a service subscriptions
Yeah,
are gaining traction in the market.
they are. And if you annualize that revenue,
Yeah.
it comes out to about $157,292.
Right. Now, it's important to note that they also reported a net loss
Right.
of $1.84 million
Mhm.
for the quarter.
Right.
Ah, yes. The net loss. We touched on that earlier.
Yeah.
But I think it deserves a little more explanation.
Okay.
For our listeners who might be newer to investing,
Mm-hmm.
can you explain what that means and
Sure.
why it's not necessarily a deal breaker
Sure.
for a company like SOBRsafe?
Of course, a net loss just means that a company's expenses were more than its revenues
Okay.
during a specific period. For a company like SOBRsafe, that's investing a lot
Right.
in research and development,
Right.
marketing, and expanding their operations. A net loss is pretty normal,
Right.
especially when they're still growing.
So it's more about understanding the context
Exactly.
rather than just seeing a negative number and panicking.
Right. It's not time to panic yet.
Exactly. Investors often look past the current financials
Mm-hmm.
and consider metrics like enterprise value,
Right.
which takes into account things like a company's debt
Mm-hmm.
and cash reserves, despite the net loss.
Yeah.
SOBRsafe's enterprise value is relatively low,
Right.
suggesting that investors believe in their long-term potential.
They do. They see the potential.
It's like looking beyond the surface
Mm-hmm.
and seeing the potential for a diamond in the rough.
I like that. That's a good analogy.
Now let's shift gears a bit
Okay.
and talk about the industry landscape.
All right.
SOBRsafe operates in the drug screening market,
Mm-hmm.
which is projected to reach a whopping $19.5 billion
Wow.
by 2029.
That's a big market.
It is. Sounds like they've positioned themselves
Mm-hmm.
in a space with incredible growth potential.
They have, and their transdermal technology really sets them apart.
Okay.
Traditional methods like breathalyzers, they
Right.
can be, cumbersome, inconvenient, and easy to cheat.
Yeah, they're not ideal.
Not really. But SOBRsafe's wearable devices offer a continuous data-driven solution
Right.
that fits perfectly with the increasing demand for more reliable and discrete monitoring.
It seems like they're hitting all the right notes
Yeah.
in terms of innovation, market opportunity, and addressing a real need.
They are.
But let's get back to the stock itself for a moment.
Okay.
We talked about the recent price action
Mm-hmm.
and some of the technical indicators. What else should investors be paying attention to?
Well, we talked about the golden cross
Yes.
of the 8-day EMA and the 20-day SMA,
Right.
which suggests growing momentum.
Okay.
But it's important to keep an eye on the 50-day SMA,
Okay.
which is currently around $1.05 to $1.08.
Right.
If the stock can break through that resistance level with strong volume, it could be a really significant sign
Of what?
of a major upward trend.
So it's like watching a racehorse approaching the finish line.
Yeah.
We're looking for that burst of energy to push them across.
Exactly. Now, remember the RSI,
Yes.
the Relative Strength Index, which measures how much the price has been changing recently.
Right.
It's in a neutral zone
Okay.
meaning the stock isn't overbought or oversold. So that doesn't really tell us which way it's going to go.
Right.
But the MACD, another technical indicator, just flipped to positive, which does suggest that more people are buying.
Okay. And don't forget about that high short interest we talked about earlier.
Oh, right. Yeah.
That could really add fuel to the fire.
It could.
If the stock price keeps going up.
Exactly. A high short interest means a lot of investors are betting against the stock.
Right.
And if the price starts rising, those short sellers may need to cover their positions
Okay.
by buying shares. And that can drive the price up even more. It's called a short squeeze.
Right. Like a chain reaction.
Exactly.
It sounds like Sobr Safe is a stock that could deliver some really exciting returns,
It could.
but it also comes with its share of risks.
Of course.
We talked about their history of stock dilution and the fact that they're still operating at a loss.
Right.
What other potential risks should investors consider?
That's a good question. I think one thing to remember is that they do have competition,
Of course.
both from established players in the drug screening market
Right.
and from other new companies developing their own alcohol detection technologies.
Competition is always a factor,
It is.
and it's important to assess how well Sobr Safe can differentiate itself
Absolutely.
and stay ahead of the game.
Right. Another thing to think about is the regulatory landscape changes in regulations governing alcohol monitoring and drug screening
Right.
could impact their business.
Of course.
For example, new regulations could make things more expensive.
Right.
Or create barriers to entry in certain markets.
That's a great point. Regulations can sometimes be a double-edged sword that can create opportunities, but they can also present challenges
Absolutely.
for companies operating in heavily regulated industries.
Exactly. And then, of course, there's always the risk that the company's technology won't be as successful as they hope.
Right.
Or that their growth strategy won't work out as planned.
Of course.
Investing in any company, especially a young, innovative one like Sobr Safe, requires a balanced approach. You have to consider both the potential rewards
Right.
and the risks involved.
So we've painted a pretty comprehensive picture of Sobr Safe.
I think so.
We've covered their technology, their financials, the market they operate in,
Right.
and the technical indicators surrounding their stock.
Yeah.
Before we wrap things up,
Okay.
I want to emphasize again that this is not financial advice.
Right.
It's really crucial for anyone thinking about investing in Sobr Safe to do their own research, consult with a financial professional, and make decisions that align with their individual investment goals
Absolutely.
and risk tolerance.
Couldn't agree more. We've given a lot of information and insights today to help our listeners understand Sobr Safe and where they fit in the market. But ultimately, the decision of whether or not to invest is a personal one.
It is.
It should be made with careful consideration and a clear understanding of the potential ups and downs.
Well said. We've covered a lot of ground today.
We have.
Exploring the exciting world of Sobr Safe
It is exciting.
and its potential impact on the alcohol detection market. Now let's take a moment to recap some of the key takeaways
Okay.
and offer some final thoughts
Sounds good.
on what the future might hold for this innovative company.
All right, let's do it.
Welcome back to Investing Talk Podcast. We spent this episode learning about Sobr Safe, a company do some really interesting things in the alcohol detection market. Their transdermal technology, the AI partnership, all the stock movement. It's been a lot.
It has, and I think it shows something really important for investors. You know, sometimes the best opportunities aren't the ones you see all over the news.
Right.
Sobr Safe is a perfect example of that. They're quietly changing a huge industry, a multi-billion-dollar industry, and most people haven't even heard of them.
And they're doing it in a way that fits with so many big trends we're seeing. The shift towards data-driven solutions, the focus on safety, and of course AI.
Exactly. Sobr Safe might be a small company, but they're playing in a big market.
So before we wrap up, let's go over some of the key takeaways for our listeners.
Okay, the first one, their transdermal alcohol detection technology. It's a complete game changer. It's discrete, it's continuous, and it gives real-time data. That's a huge improvement over things like breathalyzers, which can be really unreliable.
And we can't forget about that partnership with Orbiit Recovery, adding AI to Sobr Safe's platform that opens up so many possibilities for personalized recovery support. It could really help them grow.
The market's definitely paying attention. Remember that 20% jump in the stock price back on February 18th.
Right.
And all that short interest we talked about, that means things could get even more interesting. So it's definitely a stock to watch.
But we also have to be realistic about the risks. SOBRsafe's still growing, they're not making a profit yet, and they're up against some tough competition.
Absolutely. It's high risk, high reward. So investors need to do their homework and understand what they're getting into.
As always, we want to remind everyone that this is not financial advice. We're just sharing information and our own thoughts.
Right. We want to help you make smart decisions.
Do your own research and talk to a financial expert before investing in any stock.
Couldn't agree more.
Now, before we go, I want to leave you with one final thought. Think about the bigger picture here. What could SOBRsafe's technology mean for other industries?
That's a great point. Could it change things in healthcare, transportation, workplace safety? The possibilities are really interesting.
It's amazing how innovations can come from places you'd least expect.
That's what makes investing so exciting. There's always something new to discover.
Well said. We want to thank you for joining us on Investing Talk Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe, share this episode with your friends, and leave a comment below. Let us know what you think about SOBRsafe. We always love hearing from you.
Until next time, happy investing.